The Nintendo Switch Lite is important. And I say this because ever since it was announced, and as time has gone on, there's been some people who aren't exactly a fan of it. Don't get me wrong, there are people who are really excited about the Lite as well, but there's definitely been an element of people that are just unsatisfied with its announcement. And a large part of that comes from the idea of, why does this exist in the first place? And I get it, I do. A large part of that is frustration due to the fact that we are getting a Switch Lite in place of what people were hoping would happen next in the form of a Switch Pro. After all, PlayStation and Xbox, while both of them have released some kind of slimlined version, those were marketed as being just sort of the next step of the regular system, and then after that, they released their big systems, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. And while that isn't any kind of super old concept that we've seen in gaming, it's something that people got used to right away and very quickly, and have gotten excited at the idea of the Switch getting a similar treatment. Now, we don't know for a fact that we're not getting a Switch Pro. There's a lot of rumors and signs that point to likely we are, just not super soon, probably sometime next year. But in the meantime, Nintendo is focusing on and releasing something that's kind of a step in the opposite direction of a Pro system with the Switch Lite. Because it's not really a slimline revision, it's not something where it's the same price, offers the same stuff, but happens to fit a little better in your pocket. It is straight up, and I mean this in the best way possible, a downgrade. It removes the core feature of what a lot of people associate with the Switch, the ability to switch.
Psych!
You can't dock it at all, and you can't remove the Joy-Cons either. It is something much more along the lines of a traditional handheld console. It's more like a new version of the DS in some ways than it is a proper Switch. And while it does have better battery life than the original Switch, it actually turns out that it has worse battery life than the new recent refreshed Switch models. So a lot of people who already own Switches or have been thinking of buying one look at these trade-offs and go, why would I want to get this? Why would anyone want to get this? And the simple, polite version of this is, it's not for you. It's not targeted for you. And the extreme that a lot of people take that to is, oh, well, the Switch Lite is for kids. It's for babies, which is kind of a funny, interesting thing considering Nintendo's history. This is a very similar problem they ran into with the Wii, where the Wii was a massive success. It made a lot of money for Nintendo, but at the same time, it started kind of a perception issue with the company. The Wii's focus on motion-controlled games, and honestly a lot of which were very novelty, and the fact that a lot of third parties left them to release stuff on Xbox and PlayStation, where we started seeing a lot more adult-oriented content, while Nintendo stuck with a lot of their first-party stuff. That was still fun and great, but they never really hit the same level of maturity that people were seeing on other systems. An even bigger problem here was the fact that the Wii suffered from a lot of shovelware, which heavily impacted the way people viewed the system as, once again, being something that's not really for real gamers, but instead something for kids. And the Switch has undone a lot of that negative reputation. I mean, it had an amazing list of first-party games that came out, it was a great idea that a lot of people resonated with right away, and Nintendo has gotten a lot more lax with what they allow from third parties, obvious by the fact that you can play Doom on the system of all games. And so when I see people being really upset about the mere existence of the Switch Lite because, quote-unquote, it's for kids, my reaction is, well, yeah, it kinda is. Why is that bad? Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that every single person out there who wants a Switch Lite is a kid. I'm not saying it's just for kids only. That's just one of the main demographics. I mean, really, I want the Switch Lite, and depending on how my experience goes with it after it launches, I might even swap over from the regular Switch. The point, though, is that the Switch Lite is not a system about pushing boundaries. It's not a 0.5 system where we're looking at getting better graphics or new features or something that the regular one can't do. No, it's about something that arguably is even more important, accessibility. Because the Switch Lite isn't competing against the Xbox or the PlayStation. The Switch is, in its own way, but really the thing the Switch Lite is going up against is mobile games. This is a conversation that's been going on for a long time, and it's been dying down a little bit, but there's this ongoing concept of how well does the future of video games look in the face of something like cell phones, where everyone ends up getting one either way. There's way cheaper games you can get easy access to, and it's something that, especially when you're looking at kids, they're just getting started on way sooner. Now, personally, I've never fully believed in the idea that somehow mobile gaming is going to completely 100% replace more traditional approaches to gaming, at least until we get to the point where all devices are basically just an all-in-one thing, but that's a little further down in the future. But I don't think there's such a thing as people who are just always going to be no matter what for mobile and never interested in a console, or vice versa. But there is an important debate about people who are grown up and used to playing on one and never really get the exposure to the other. And that's where the Switch Lite comes in, because while it is lacking a lot of features compared to the regular Switch, and like I said, is honestly a downgrade, it has one very big strength over it: price point. $100 off, in fact. Price point is one of the most underestimated reasons of why a system can sell well. I'm not saying that it's the only thing that matters. Obviously, having a great game library, having a powerful system, having useful features that people find great are all good selling points. But at the end of the day, making something more affordable simply gets it into more houses. I mean, again, look back at the Wii. Nintendo was suffering a bit of a reputation hit with that, and it didn't have necessarily the strongest Nintendo library of games ever. It still had its good individual hits. But at the end of the day, it still sold way more units than the PS3 or 360. Why? Because it was a lot more affordable at the get-go and became even cheaper over time, making it a really great choice for people that wanted to pick it up for their families. The goal here isn't to appeal to people that are already into gaming. You already own a Switch or already planning on saving up to buy one. They have your interest already. The point of the Switch Lite is to make something that is at a more affordable price range, so someone who isn't necessarily super into gaming is more likely to go, huh, maybe that's something I'll check out or try. Or in the case of someone getting it for kids, again, something that I think the Switch Lite is heavily aimed for, it's a lot more appealing to buy a $200 system than a $300 one. And while there are some downgrade aspects to the Switch Lite, I would argue that there are some other aspects of its design that makes it more appealing for that specific audience. The fact that it is smaller and more portable, whether you want to put it in some kind of carrying case or slip it into a bag, it's just going to carry around a lot easier. And it's one solid design. I cannot emphasize enough how, while the Switch is an awesome handheld, there's a certain level of scariness with it because of the way the Joy-Cons are. If you drop it, those can break off, that can break latches, all kinds of things can happen. With the Switch Lite, at least in concept and hopefully with it being one continuous piece, it's going to be a stronger unit, which is a lot better if you're handing it to a kid. And this is why the Switch Lite is important. Not because it's the strongest, most powerful system out there that's going to give you the best gaming experience you've ever had, but because it's going to be a much more attractive offer to get someone who hasn't really played games before more interested in actually giving them a shot and being their gateway into eventually, buying an Xbox, buying a PlayStation, buying a gaming PC, or just getting a more powerful version of the Switch, maybe even a Switch Pro next year. Simply put, the Switch Lite is not about quality, it's quantity. I understand why this isn't super exciting to everyone that has a Switch right now. There's definitely that hope of, hey, like a more powerful one down the line would be really cool. I'd like that too, but honestly, I can't help but be excited by the idea that this is going to help make the Switch even more popular across an even larger audience. And at the end of the day, the more people that buy Nintendo Switch Lites that weren't planning on buying a regular Switch in the first place means more profits for Nintendo, which means they're going to keep making more and more stuff that we're excited about. Because look, Breath of the Wild 2 is not going to pay for itself. Or actually, it might once it releases, because, yeah, Breath of the Wild did really well. And they also get that a big part of this argument is whether or not the Switch Lite even really truly counts as a Switch, because it doesn't do the namesake. It's just a permanent handheld and that's it. And look, the ability to swap between two modes is awesome. The ability to, out in public, take off a Joy-Con and hand it to someone else and start doing co-op is awesome. But it's not a make or break thing for the system. I think it was a great concept to make it something enticing to people when it was first released. I think it's something that there are people out there really love using, but there's gonna be a lot of people who tried that out when they first got the system and haven't used it since. There are plenty of people who just use the Switch as a dedicated handheld, and that's exactly the niche the Switch Lite is going to help fill while being cheaper to buy in the first place. More importantly, it's gonna make it something much more accessible to a lot more people, and that's a good thing.